Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the English in Ease podcast. I'm Emily, your host, and I'm so happy to have you here with me today. Whether you're a regular listener or new to the podcast, it's wonderful that you've decided to join me today. I've got a really important topic to share with you, one that's not just about learning English, but about life in general. Today, we're going to talk about why consistency is more important than talent. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Isn't talent important? Well, yes, it's nice to have, but consistency is what really gets results. I've seen it time and time again in language learners. Some people pick up English with ease, almost effortlessly, but if they don't practice, they stagnate. On the other hand, I've seen learners who don't start off strong, who struggle a bit at first. But guess what? They stick with it, day by day, and soon enough, they make huge strides. And you know what? These are the learners who truly succeed in the long run. So, today we'll dive into why consistency trumps talent, why showing up every day matters more than natural ability, and I'll share some tips on how you can build consistency into your own learning routine. I'll also walk you through a fun role play later, comparing a talented learner with someone who's just consistent. It's going to be both useful and fun. Before we get into all of that, though, let's first break down two key terms we're going to use today: talent and consistency. You might have heard them before, but let's make sure we're all on the same page. Talent. What exactly does that mean? Talent refers to a natural ability, something that comes easily to you without much effort. You might have a talent for singing, for example, or maybe you have a talent for picking up languages. Some people can hear a song once and sing it perfectly without practicing. It's like magic. It's the same with languages. You might meet someone who just seems to get English effortlessly, picking up vocabulary quickly, speaking with ease, and understanding grammar rules without much trouble. Sounds great, right? But here's the thing about talent: it's just a starting point. It's not the whole story. Talent can help you in the beginning, but it won't get you all the way to success. And that's where consistency comes in. Consistency means showing up, day after day, even when it's tough, even when you feel like you're not making much progress. Consistency is what you do when you practice every day, whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or an hour. You keep going, you make it a habit, and over time, the results start to show. Take, for example, someone who might not have a natural gift for English, but they study every single day. They watch videos, read books, or maybe keep a journal in English. Little by little, they improve. And guess what? The consistent learner often surpasses the talented learner who doesn't put in the effort. It's not about being perfect. It's about sticking with it. You don't need to be born with talent to succeed in learning English. Consistency is the secret ingredient. And the best part? Anyone can do it. You don't have to be the smartest or most gifted person in the room. You just need to be committed to showing up every day. Let me give you an example. I'm sure you've heard this one before. Have you ever known someone who's naturally good at something but just doesn't put in the work? Maybe they're great at speaking English, but they don't study or practice. They think they don't need to. And after a while, their skills start to plateau. They stop improving because they aren't practicing. I've seen it happen countless times, and it's something we really need to understand. Talent can take you only so far. It might give you a good start, but without consistent effort, you'll never reach your full potential. And here's the other thing: when talented people face challenges, they tend to give up more quickly. Why? Because they aren't used to struggling. They've always been able to do things easily. So when things get difficult, they think, maybe this just isn't for me. But consistent learners, they know that learning takes time. They keep going even when it's hard. They don't quit. Now, let's think about English. If you only practice English once a week, or even once every few days, you're not going to make much progress, even if you're naturally talented. But if you commit to practicing every day, even just for 15 minutes, you'll see massive improvement over time. That's the magic of consistency. It's not about being the most gifted person. It's about putting in the effort every day. So, to sum up, talent is great, but consistency is the true key to success. Talent might give you a head start, but it's consistency that gets you to the finish line. And the good news is, consistency is something you can control. You don't need to rely on talent, you just need to show up, day in and day out. I'm sure you're starting to see why consistency is so powerful. But now, let's take it a step further. Why isn't talent enough? Let me share some real-life examples that illustrate this perfectly. I want you to think about someone you know who has tons of talent but doesn't put in the work. What happens to them? Let's talk about someone I know. A student of mine. Her name is Amina. When Amina first started learning English, she was shy and struggled a lot. Her pronunciation wasn't great, and she found grammar to be difficult. It wasn't an easy start for Amina, but you know what? She never gave up. She practiced every single day, whether it was watching English videos, listening to podcasts like this one, or even keeping a journal in English. Little by little, Amina grew more confident. After 6 months, she was much more comfortable with the language. A year later, she could hold conversations fluently. And today, Amina works at an international company. Here's the thing, Amina wasn't the most naturally talented learner, but she was one of the most consistent. And that's what made all the difference. She stuck with it every single day. Part of being consistent is learning from your mistakes. Amina knew she wouldn't be perfect right away, and that didn't stop her. She kept moving forward, step by step, and that's how she made progress. And you know what? This isn't just about English. Think about Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba. When he was young, he wasn't great at English. He failed many exams and was even rejected from jobs, including KFC. But did he quit? No. Jack Ma practiced English every morning by talking to tourists. He didn't give up, and his consistent practice paid off. Now, he's a global business leader. Another great example is Cristiano Ronaldo. He wasn't the most talented footballer when he was young, but he worked harder than anyone else. Today, he's one of the greatest footballers of all time. See the pattern. Talent is helpful, but consistency is what really leads to success. Whether you're learning English or pursuing a dream, consistency is what will carry you through. I hope these stories inspire you. You don't need to be the most talented person. You just need to show up every day. That's what makes the difference. And if you're feeling a bit discouraged right now, don't worry. Just take it one day at a time. Even if you only have 15 minutes to practice English, make that time count. That's how progress happens. All right, let's move on to the next part in our journey together. So far, we've talked about how consistency can help you succeed, no matter your natural abilities. But now, let's dig deeper into how exactly consistency helps you learn English faster. Learning English, or any language, isn't something that happens overnight. It's not like flipping a switch and instantly becoming fluent. Language learning is more like gardening little by little. You nurture it, and over time, you'll see it grow. If you water a plant every day, it will flourish. But if you stop watering it, it will wither. The same goes for your English skills. When you're consistent, you reinforce what you've learned every day. Vocabulary, grammar, listening, and speaking all get stronger the more you practice. You might not notice huge changes day by day, but after a week, a month, or even a few months, you'll look back and see real improvement. The key here is to stay consistent, even when it feels like nothing is happening. It's like those days when you feel like you're not making progress. Trust me, you are just keep going. Consistency doesn't just help you remember vocabulary, it helps you improve your understanding of grammar, too. You start to see patterns. The more you practice, the more familiar those rules become. And when you encounter something new, it feels less like a challenge and more like another puzzle piece you can fit into the bigger picture of your English journey. Think about this for a moment. How often have you heard people say they forget what they learned because they didn't practice enough? I know I've heard it many times, especially from learners who start strong but then stop. It's not that they're not smart or talented, it's that they stopped practicing. And without practice, it's easy to forget what you've learned. I remember a student I worked with who struggled to maintain consistency. She started off strong, downloading apps and watching videos every day. But after a few weeks, she got busy, and English took a back seat. She said she didn't have time. But when she came back a month later, she found herself having to start over from scratch. That's one of the dangers of inconsistency. You lose the progress you made and have to rebuild. But here's the great part: when you're consistent, you don't have to worry about losing your progress. It just keeps building on itself. Even 10 minutes a day can make a huge difference. That's why I always tell my students it's not about the amount of time you spend, it's about doing something every day. That's how you create a habit. You don't need hours of study. You just need a little bit of effort each day. Let's pause here for a second. If you're listening to this and thinking, I don't have time to study English every day, I want you to rethink that. Everyone can find 10 minutes. Maybe you can listen to a podcast while you're cooking, or watch a video during your commute. Use your spare moments wisely. The consistency of doing just a little bit each day will accumulate over time, and you'll be amazed by how much progress you make. Another way consistency helps you is by making English feel natural. When you study every day, your brain starts to think in English. You start to understand the language at a deeper level. The more you practice, the more it feels like you're speaking your second nature, and that's the goal, right? To make English feel like a part of you, not something you're struggling to keep up with. Here's the thing: language learning doesn't have to be a stressful task. If you try to force yourself to study for hours, you might burn out. But if you commit to small, manageable chunks of time each day, it becomes something you enjoy. You'll find yourself looking forward to your English practice because it doesn't feel like a burden, and that's when the magic happens. Now, let's talk about how consistency also helps with your confidence. You see, every time you practice, you build a little more confidence. Even if you make mistakes, especially if you make mistakes, you get better. Don't forget, making mistakes is part of the learning process. It's not about being perfect. It's about learning from those mistakes and improving. In fact, I'd argue that the learners who are consistent tend to be more confident than those who are naturally talented. Why? Because they've practiced more. They've been through the struggles and have come out the other side stronger. They're not afraid to make mistakes because they've already been making them and learning from them. Take a moment to reflect on your own journey. Have you ever felt hesitant to speak because you didn't want to make mistakes? We've all been there. But guess what? The more you speak, the more you'll improve. And the more you improve, the more confident you'll become. Consistency gives you the confidence to keep going, even when you're not perfect. Okay, so now we know why consistency is so important. But what about those moments when you feel like giving up? What about when things get hard and you want to take a break? It happens to everyone. You're learning a language, and sometimes it feels like you're not getting anywhere. But I'm here to tell you that it's okay to feel frustrated. It's part of the process. When those tough moments come, remember why you started. Stay focused on your long-term goal. I always tell my students to keep their eyes on the prize. It's not about perfection today, It's about improvement over time. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. You can always reach out to a community or study partner for support. That's why I always encourage you to find a routine that works for you, whether it's a specific time each day or just a few minutes whenever you can fit it in. Make it a habit. Once it becomes part of your daily life, it won't feel like work anymore. It will just feel like something natural, something you do because it's a part of your routine. And that's when consistency becomes a lifestyle. But what if you miss a day? Don't worry. Don't beat yourself up. Life happens. The important thing is to get back on track the next day. Don't let one missed day turn into a week of missed days. Stay on track, and you'll see results. Remember, consistency doesn't mean perfection. It means showing up, even when you don't feel like it. So, with all that said, let's wrap up this section. Consistency is the secret to learning English. Talent is great, but it's the daily practice that will truly make you fluent. Stick with it. Even when things are hard, keep showing up, even when you don't feel like it. And remember, every step you take is a step toward success. Now, let's talk about some common mistakes learners make when they stop being consistent. Ready? Let's dive into that next. All right, let's dive into some of the most common mistakes learners make when it comes to consistency. I'm sure you can relate to at least one of these. The first big mistake: starting strong but then stopping too soon. This happens all the time. In the beginning, everything feels exciting. You're motivated, maybe even inspired. You download all the apps, buy the books, watch every YouTube video you can find, and feel like you're really getting somewhere. But after a few weeks, things start to slow down, and before you know it, you've stopped. It's so easy to fall into this trap, right? We all want quick results. We want to see progress right away. But language learning doesn't work that way. You're not going to be fluent in a month. It takes time, patience, and persistence. And that's why stopping too soon is one of the biggest mistakes you can make. I've seen it firsthand with many of my students. They start out strong, full of energy, but after a couple of weeks, they get discouraged. They're not seeing the rapid progress they hoped for, so they give up. They think, I'll try again later, but later never comes. This is where consistency really comes into play. If you stop practicing because things feel hard or progress is slow, you'll never get the full benefits. It's like going to the gym and lifting weights for 1 week, then quitting because you don't see immediate results. You have to keep at it, even if you only have 10 or 15 minutes a day. Just do something every day. That's how you build a habit. And that's how real progress happens. Now, let's talk about another common mistake learners who stop because they're afraid of making mistakes. I get it. Mistakes can be scary, especially when you're trying to speak in a new language. But here's the thing. Mistakes are not only inevitable, they're necessary. The only way you'll improve is by making them and learning from them. Let me give you an example. There's this student I worked with. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah was so afraid of making mistakes that she wouldn't speak English in front of anyone. She would try to study, but the moment she had to actually use English, she would freeze up. She was afraid of sounding wrong, afraid of embarrassing herself. But after some time, Sarah realized that every mistake was a learning opportunity. She started to speak more, even when she wasn't sure if she was saying things correctly. And guess what? Her English improved so much faster once she started embracing her mistakes. That's the key. You can't be afraid to make mistakes. It's part of the learning process. The more you speak, the more mistakes you'll make. But you'll also improve faster. Another common mistake is thinking that learning English is all about grammar rules and vocabulary lists. Yes, grammar and vocabulary are important. But language learning is much more than that. if you focus only on memorizing words or getting every grammar rule perfect, you'll miss out on the real skill of communication. The goal isn't to be perfect, it's to be able to communicate effectively. Let me tell you a story. I had another student named Mike who was always focused on grammar. He would spend hours studying grammar books and memorizing rules, but he would avoid speaking because he didn't feel perfect. He wanted to know every rule before he tried speaking. Here's the problem: Mike wasn't learning to communicate. He was focused on perfection, and that held him back. The truth is, learning a language isn't just about being grammatically perfect. It's about being able to understand others and express yourself. If you're constantly trying to be perfect, you'll miss the point of language altogether. Don't worry about making mistakes. Just focus on communicating. So, the next time you feel discouraged because you're not perfect, remember this progress is not about being flawless. It's about moving forward, even with mistakes. If you make mistakes and keep going, you're on the right path. Just keep practicing and use your mistakes as stepping stones to get better. Now that we've talked about mistakes, let's focus on some solutions. How can you stay consistent? Even when it's hard, how can you keep going when you're tempted to give up? Let's explore some tips that will help you stay on track, even on the toughest days. Tip number 1: set small, clear goals. Don't try to study for hours at a time, especially if you're just starting out. Instead, aim for small, achievable goals. Maybe you want to learn 5 new words a day, or practice speaking for 10 minutes every morning. Small goals are easier to reach, and they help you stay motivated. Tip number 2: create a routine. If you want to make consistency a habit, you need to fit it into your daily life. Set aside a specific time each day to study English. Maybe it's after breakfast or before bed. When you create a routine, it becomes easier to stick with it. It becomes a part of your day, like brushing your teeth or having a cup of coffee. Tip number 3: make it fun. You don't have to sit at a desk with a grammar book for hours. If you like movies, watch English language shows with subtitles. If you love music, listen to English songs. If you enjoy reading, find an English book or article that interests you. Learning doesn't have to be boring. The more fun you have, the easier it will be to stay consistent. Tip number 4: find a study buddy or join a community. It's much easier to stay consistent when you have someone else to share the journey with. Whether it's a friend, a teacher, or a group of learners, having someone to practice with keeps you accountable. Plus, it's a lot more fun to learn with others. Tip number 5: celebrate your progress. Every little win counts, whether it's learning a new word, having your first conversation, or understanding a movie in English. Celebrate it. These small victories add up over time, and they'll keep you motivated. And here's the last tip: don't give up, even when it gets hard. Remember, consistency is key. You might not see huge results right away, but keep showing up. Even if you can only study for 10 minutes a day, do it. That consistency will pay off in the long run. Now, for today's challenge, I want to challenge you to try a simple 7-day English practice challenge. Yes, 7 days of practicing English every single day for at least 10 minutes. You can read, listen, speak, or write, whatever works for you. The goal is to practice every day, no matter what. Mark each day on a calendar, or use a notebook to keep track. At the end of the week, look back and see how much progress you've made. I bet you'll be surprised at how far you've come. So, are you up for the challenge? We believe in you. I'll check in with you next time to see how you did. Remember, consistency builds habits, and habits build success. Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to English in Ease. I hope you're feeling inspired to stay consistent with your English learning. No matter where you're starting from, if you practice every day, you will improve. You don't have to be perfect, just keep going. Every step counts. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Keep practicing, stay consistent, and most importantly, enjoy the journey. Bye, everyone. Keep shining.